The scorching summer sun of 1875 beat down upon the small Colorado town of Willow Creek as Dahlia Evans stumbled off the stagecoach. Her face still bearing the fading bruises from a past she was desperately trying to escape. The journey west had been long, but necessity had driven her from Boston with nothing but a small carpet bag and the fading hope of starting anew. Dust swirled around her ankles as she surveyed the main street with its weathered buildings and hitching posts. Willow Creek was smaller than she had imagined, a far cry from the bustling streets of Boston she had known all her 22 years. But that was precisely why she had chosen it. Here, she could disappear. "You look lost, miss," a gruff voice called out, and Dahlia turned to see the stagecoach driver eyeing her with a mixture of curiosity and impatience. "Town ain't big, but it's easy enough to get turned around if you're new." Dahlia straightened her spine, wincing at the pain that still lingered in her ribs. "I'm looking for Mrs. Holloway's boarding house. I was told she might have a room available." The driver pointed toward a two-story building at the end of the street. "That's it there. Though I should warn you, Mrs. Holloway's particular about who she takes in." Dahlia nodded her thanks, gathering her carpetbag and making her way down the dusty street. She felt the stares of the townsfolk, their curious eyes following this newcomer in their midst. She kept her gaze fixed ahead, ignoring the whispers that trailed in her wake. Mrs. Holloway turned out to be a stern-faced woman in her 50s with sharp eyes that seemed to see through Dahlia's carefully constructed facade. "You're running from something," she stated bluntly after Dahlia inquired about a room. Dahlia stiffened. "I'm looking for a fresh start. Aren't we all?" Mrs. Holloway's expression softened slightly. "Room's $5 a week, includes breakfast and supper. No gentlemen callers, no liquor, and I expect you to find employment within a fortnight or you'll need to move on." Dahlia reached into her reticule and pulled out several carefully counted bills. "I can pay for 2 weeks in advance." Mrs. Holloway's eyes widened slightly at the sight of the money, but she nodded curtly. "Very well. Room's upstairs, last door on the right. Supper's at 6 sharp." The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window that overlooked the main street. Dahlia set her carpetbag on the bed and moved to the window, watching as life in Willow Creek continued below her. Men on horseback, women gathering at the general store, children darting between buildings in some game of their own devising. She pressed a hand to her still tender ribs and wondered if she had come far enough. The next morning, Dahlia set out to find employment. The general store had no positions available, nor did the small millinery shop. By midday, she found herself standing outside the Silverado Saloon, staring up at the swinging doors with trepidation. It wasn't the sort of establishment a respectable woman would seek employment in, but Dahlia's options were dwindling. Just as she was about to step inside, a commotion down the street caught her attention. A wagon had overturned, spilling crates and barrels across the road. Without thinking, Dahlia hurried to assist, helping a flustered woman gather scattered tins and packets. "Thank you, dear," the woman said, pushing a strand of graying hair from her face. "I told Henry we loaded too much, but men never listen, do they?" Dahlia smiled politely, continuing to collect scattered items. "I'm Martha Wilson," the woman continued. "My husband and I run the mercantile down the way." "Dahlia Evans," she replied, extending her hand. "I just arrived yesterday." Martha's eyes lit with recognition. "Oh, you're staying at Abigail Holloway's place, aren't you? Word travels fast in Willow Creek." She glanced at the saloon and then back to Dahlia. "Were you looking for work there?" Dahlia flushed. "I've been inquiring all over town. I need to secure employment quickly." Martha studied her for a moment before nodding decisively. "Our assistant just left to get married last month. If you can manage inventory and have a decent hand at figures, the position is yours." Relief washed over Dahlia. "I'm quite proficient with numbers, Mrs. Wilson, and I'm a quick learner." "Wonderful. Can you start tomorrow?" 8 o'clock sharp. As Dahlia helped the Wilsons put the rest of their goods back onto the repaired wagon, she felt the weight on her shoulders lighten slightly. Perhaps Willow Creek would be the fresh start she needed after all. Over the next few weeks, Dahlia settled into a routine. She rose early, helped Mrs. Holloway with breakfast preparations, and then walked to the mercantile, where she spent her days organizing inventory, managing the ledger, and assisting customers. The work was straightforward, and the Wilsons were kind employers who respected her privacy and didn't pry into her past. It was during her third week in Willow Creek that she first saw him. The bell above the door jingled, and Dahlia looked up from the ledger to see a tall man duck through the entrance. The first thing she noticed was his eyes a startling blue against sun-bronzed skin. He removed his hat, revealing tousled dark hair, and nodded politely in her direction before approaching the counter. "Morning, miss," he said, his voice deep and pleasant. "Henry around?" Dahlia shook her head, finding her voice. "Mr. Wilson had to ride out to the Miller farm. Their youngest took ill in the night. Is there something I can help you with?" The man studied her with those piercing blue eyes. "You must be new. I'm Tyler Callahan. I run the Double C ranch north of town." "Dahlia Evans," she replied. "I started working for the Wilsons a few weeks ago." Tyler Callahan nodded, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Well, Miss Evans, I've got a supply order to pick up. Henry said it'd be ready today." Dahlia consulted the ledger. "Yes, Mr. Callahan, your order is ready. It's quite substantial. Do you have help to load it?" "My ranch hands are securing some other supplies. I can manage." As she helped him locate his items, Dahlia couldn't help but notice the way he moved with a quiet confidence that spoke of a man comfortable in his own skin. Unlike the posturing, swaggering men that frequented the saloon, Tyler Callahan had nothing to prove. They worked in companionable silence until all his supplies were gathered. When it came time to tally the bill, their fingers brushed briefly as he handed her payment, sending an unexpected jolt through Dahlia's system. "Thank you for your help, Miss Evans," he said, settling his hat back on his head. "Hope to see you again soon." After he left, Dahlia found herself watching his retreating figure through the window. There was something about Tyler Callahan that intrigued her, though she quickly chastised herself for the thought. The last thing she needed was to develop an interest in any man, no matter how courteous or intriguing. Tyler Callahan became a regular visitor to the mercantile over the following weeks. Sometimes he came for supplies, other times just to pass the time in conversation with Henry or Martha. Dahlia noticed he always made a point to greet her, often lingering to ask about her day or comment on the weather. "You've caught his eye," Martha remarked one afternoon after Tyler had left. Dahlia nearly dropped the bolt of fabric she was measuring. "I'm sure I don't know what you mean." Martha chuckled. "Tyler Callahan doesn't make special trips to town for coffee beans he can send a ranch hand to fetch. He's coming to see you, dear." "That's absurd," Dahlia protested, though she felt her cheeks warming. "Mr. Callahan is simply being polite." "If you say so," Martha replied with a knowing smile. "But Tyler's one of the good ones. His father built that ranch from nothing, and Tyler's worked it since he was knee-high to a grasshopper. Not a finer man in the territory, if you ask me." Despite her resolve to keep her distance, Dahlia found herself looking forward to Tyler's visits. There was a gentleness to him that belied his rugged exterior, and she often caught him watching her with a warmth that made her heart flutter traitorously in her chest. It was during the town's Founders' Day celebration that everything changed. The entire population of Willow Creek had gathered in the town square for music, dancing, and feasting. Dahlia had been reluctant to attend, but Martha had insisted, even lending her a pretty blue dress for the occasion. "You can't hide away forever," Martha had said firmly. "You're part of this community now." So Dahlia found herself seated on a wooden bench at the edge of the festivities, watching as couples twirled to the lively fiddle music. She was so engrossed in the scene that she didn't notice Tyler's approach until he was standing before her, hand extended. "May I have this dance, Miss Evans?" Dahlia hesitated. "I'm not much of a dancer, Mr. Callahan." "Neither am I," he admitted with a grin. "But I reckon we can stumble through it together." Against her better judgment, Dahlia placed her hand in his and allowed him to lead her to the makeshift dance floor. His hand was warm and calloused against the small of her back as he guided her through the steps of a simple waltz. "You look beautiful tonight," he said softly, and Dahlia felt her breath catch. "Thank you," she murmured, acutely aware of his proximity. "You clean up rather well yourself." Tyler laughed, the sound rich and genuine. High praise indeed. As they danced, Dahlia felt the eyes of the townspeople upon them. Tyler Callahan was something of a local hero, a successful rancher, fair employer, and by all accounts, a man of integrity. And here he was, dancing with the mysterious newcomer who kept to herself and rarely socialized. People are staring, she whispered. Tyler's gaze never left her face. Let them. I'm only interested in one person's opinion tonight. The dance ended too soon, and Tyler reluctantly released her as the music changed tempo. But instead of returning to her seat, he took her hand. Would you care to take a walk? It's a fine evening, and the view of the stars from the creek is something special. Dahlia knew she should refuse. Getting close to anyone, especially someone like Tyler Callahan, wasn't part of her plan. But the warmth in his blue eyes and the gentle pressure of his hand in hers made her nod agreement before she could think better of it. They walked in silence down the lamp-lit main street and onto the path that led to Willow Creek itself, the waterway that had given the town its name. The sounds of the celebration faded behind them, replaced by the gentle gurgle of flowing water and the chorus of night insects. I come here sometimes when town gets too noisy, Tyler said, leading her to a flat rock beside the creek. Helps clear my head. Dahlia settled beside him, gazing up at the vast expanse of stars overhead. It's beautiful. Yes, Tyler agreed, though when she glanced his way, she found him looking not at the stars but at her. The silence between them stretched, comfortable yet charged with something unnamed. Finally, Tyler spoke, his voice quiet but steady. Dahlia, I've been trying to find the right words for weeks now. I'm not much for fancy speech, but I need you to know that I care for you. More than I thought possible. Dahlia's heart hammered in her chest. Tyler, you don't have to say anything, he interrupted gently. I see the way you hold yourself apart from everyone. I know you're carrying something heavy. I just want you to know that when you're ready to set it down, I'd be honored to help you carry it. Tears pricked at Dahlia's eyes. You don't know what you're saying. You don't know me, not really. I know enough, Tyler said firmly. I know you're kind and intelligent. I know you work hard and deal fairly with everyone. I know the smile you save for the children who come into the store is different from the one you give to everyone else it reaches your eyes. A single tear slipped down Dahlia's cheek. There are things in my past. The past is just that, Tyler said, reaching out to gently brush away the tear. It's behind you. I'm more interested in what's ahead. Before Dahlia could respond, a shout echoed from the direction of town, followed by the unmistakable crack of a gunshot. Tyler was on his feet in an instant, positioning himself protectively in front of Dahlia. Stay here, he commanded, but Dahlia was already rising. I'm coming with you, she insisted, gathering her skirts. They hurried back toward town, where chaos had erupted. People were scattering from the town square, and several men stood in a tense standoff outside the Silverado saloon. What's happening? Tyler asked, grabbing the arm of a passing townsman. Gang from up north, the man panted. They just rode in, started making trouble. Shot old man Jenkins when he objected to them harassing his daughter. Tyler's expression darkened. Where's the sheriff? Out on patrol, won't be back till morning. Tyler turned to Dahlia. Get to the boarding house and stay there. Lock the door. But, please, Dahlia. I need to know you're safe. The urgency in his voice compelled her to nod. Be careful. As Dahlia hurried toward Mrs. Holloway's boarding house, another shot rang out, followed by the sound of breaking glass and raucous laughter. She quickened her pace, heart pounding with fear not just for herself, but for Tyler and the townsfolk caught in the chaos. She had almost reached the safety of the boarding house when a rough hand grabbed her arm, yanking her into the shadows between buildings. Well, a voice slurred in her ear, reeking of whiskey and tobacco. What do we have here? Dahlia struggled against the iron grip, but the man, one of the strangers who had ridden into town, was too strong. Let me go. Don't think I will, he growled, shoving her against the wall. Pretty little thing, like you shouldn't be out alone on a night like this. Terror seized Dahlia as memories flooded back another time, another man, the same helpless feeling. But this time, she wouldn't be a victim. She brought her knee up sharply, catching her assailant in a vulnerable spot. He doubled over with a howl of pain, and Dahlia seized the opportunity to run. She didn't make it far. Another man stepped into her path, grabbing her roughly. Feisty one, ain't she? Might need to teach her some manners. Dahlia screamed, the sound echoing through the night, but it was quickly muffled by a dirty hand clamped over her mouth. She bit down hard, tasting blood, and the hand was withdrawn with a curse. You'll pay for that, you little. The threat was cut short as the man was suddenly wrenched away, a blur of motion in the darkness. Tyler Callahan stood there, fury etched on his features, his fist connecting solidly with the stranger's jaw. "Touch her again, and it'll be the last thing you do," Tyler growled, his voice deadly calm. The first assailant had recovered enough to draw his gun, but Tyler was faster. In one fluid motion, he drew his own weapon and fired, the bullet striking the man's hand and sending his gun clattering to the ground. "Get out of my town," Tyler ordered, his aim unwavering. "You and your friends. Now." The wounded man clutched his bleeding hand, face contorted with rage. "This ain't over, Callahan. It is if you want to leave breathing," Tyler replied coldly. After a tense moment, the men retreated, cursing and threatening as they went. Tyler didn't lower his gun until they were out of sight, then immediately turned to Dahlia. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice gentle as he examined her face in the dim light. Dahlia shook her head, though she was trembling violently. "No, Her voice broke, and Tyler pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she might shatter. "I've got you," he murmured against her hair. "You're safe now." As the adrenaline ebbed, Dahlia's legs gave way beneath her. Tyler caught her effortlessly, lifting her into his arms as if she weighed nothing. "Let's get you to Doc Peters," he said, already striding toward the doctor's office at the end of the street. "I'm not hurt," Dahlia protested weakly. "Just shaken." Tyler's expression was grim. "Humor me." The doctor's office was crowded with townsfolk tending to those injured in the brawl. Old man Jenkins lay on a cot, his shoulder bandaged, while Doc Peters worked to extract a bullet from another man's leg. "Set her down over there," the doctor called to Tyler, nodding toward an empty chair in the corner. "I'll get to her as soon as I can." "I told you, I'm fine," Dahlia insisted as Tyler gently deposited her in the chair. "Others need the doctor more than I do." Tyler crouched before her, taking her hands in his. "Dahlia, you're as white as a sheet, and you're still shaking. Just let the doc look you over, then I'll take you back to the boarding house." Before she could argue further, the door burst open, and Sheriff Monroe strode in, his expression thunderous. "What in tarnation happened here? I ride out for one night, and the whole town goes to hell." The townsfolk began speaking all at once, but the sheriff raised a hand for silence. His gaze landed on Tyler. "Callahan, give it to me straight." Tyler stood, briefly recounting the events of the evening, the arrival of the strangers, the shooting, and the subsequent chaos. When he described finding Dahlia being assaulted, his voice grew tight, with barely controlled anger. "And where are these men now?" the sheriff demanded. "Headed north, I reckon," Tyler replied. "But they made threats. They might come back." Sheriff Monroe nodded grimly. "I'll gather a posse at first light, track them down." He glanced at Dahlia. "Miss Evans, I'll need a statement from you." Dahlia nodded numbly. "Of course. Tomorrow," Tyler interjected firmly. "She needs rest tonight." The sheriff looked as if he might argue, but after taking in Dahlia's pale face and trembling hands, he relented. "First thing tomorrow, then." After Doc Peters pronounced Dahlia physically unharmed but suffering from shock, Tyler insisted on escorting her back to the boarding house. Mrs. Holloway met them at the door, her usual stern expression replaced with genuine concern. "Good Lord, child, what happened to you?" she exclaimed, ushering them inside. "She was attacked by those troublemakers," Tyler explained. "Doc says she's not hurt, just shaken up." Mrs. Holloway clucked her tongue sympathetically. "Poor dear. Come, let's get you upstairs. I'll bring up some tea with a drop of brandy, settle your nerves." As they climbed the stairs to her room, Dahlia found herself leaning heavily on Tyler's arm, exhaustion suddenly overwhelming her. Inside her room, Mrs. Holloway bustled about, turning down the bed and lighting the lamp while Tyler stood awkwardly in the doorway. "I'll wait downstairs," he said. "Make sure you're settled before I head out." Dahlia caught his hand. "Thank you," she whispered, "for what you did tonight." Tyler squeezed her fingers gently. "Get some rest. I'll check on you tomorrow." After he left, Mrs. Holloway helped Dahlia change into her nightgown and settled her into bed with a cup of tea laced with brandy. The older woman's movements were efficient but gentle, motherly in a way that brought unexpected tears to Dahlia's eyes. "There now," Mrs. Holloway said, patting her hand. "You're safe. This town looks after its own, and like it or not, you're one of us now." The words, simple as they were, broke something open inside Dahlia. The tears came in earnest then, weeks of tension and years of fear pouring out in great, heaving sobs. Mrs. Holloway held her through the storm, murmuring soothing nonsense until Dahlia was spent, empty of tears. I was married, Dahlia confessed in the quiet aftermath, the words spilling out before she could stop them. Back in Boston. His name was James Elliott. He was charming, wealthy, respected. And behind closed doors, he was a monster. Mrs. Holloway's hand stilled on Dahlia's hair. Oh, child. For 3 years, I endured it. Dahlia continued, the words coming easier now that she'd begun. The beatings, the humiliation, the control. Then one night, he came home drunk and angry about a business deal gone wrong. He beat me so badly I couldn't get out of bed for a week. When I could finally stand, I took what money I had saved in secret, and I ran. You did right to leave, Mrs. Holloway said firmly. No woman should endure such treatment. Dahlia shook her head. You don't understand. James is powerful. He has connections. If he finds me, he won't. Mrs. Holloway interrupted with surprising fierceness. Not here. And if by some chance he does, he'll have the entire town of Willow Creek to contend with Tyler Callahan chief among them. The mention of Tyler brought fresh tears to Dahlia's eyes. He deserves someone whole, not someone broken like me. Mrs. Holloway scoffed. Broken? Is that what you think you are? Girl, you survived. You found the courage to leave a situation most women would resign themselves to. You traveled across the country alone to build a new life. That's not broken, that's stronger than steel. With those words ringing in her ears, Dahlia drifted into an exhausted sleep. The next morning, she woke to find the town abuzz with news. The sheriff's posse had tracked down the troublemakers to a camp just outside town and arrested them. They were being transported to the territorial prison to await trial for assault and attempted murder. Willow Creek was safe once more. Dahlia gave her statement to Sheriff Monroe, her voice steady as she recounted the attack. When she finished, the sheriff regarded her with newfound respect. You showed real grit, Miss Evans. Not many would have fought back like you did. Later that day, Tyler arrived at the boarding house, hat in hand, a bouquet of wildflowers clutched awkwardly in his grip. Thought these might brighten your day, he said, presenting them to Dahlia with a shy smile. They're beautiful, she replied, inhaling their sweet scent. Thank you. They sat on the porch swing, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the yard. For a while, they simply sat in companionable silence, the rhythmic creaking of the swing the only sound between them. I need to tell you something, Dahlia finally said, her fingers nervously twisting in her lap. Tyler waited patiently as she gathered her courage, his steadfast presence giving her strength. Haltingly at first, then with growing confidence, Dahlia told him everything about James, the abuse, her escape, her fear. When she finished, Tyler was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Dahlia's heart sank. She had been right to worry. No man wanted a woman with such baggage, such a troubled past. Look at me, Dahlia, Tyler finally said, his voice gentle but firm. Reluctantly, she raised her eyes to meet his. What that man did to you was unconscionable, Tyler said, righteous anger evident in his tone. But it doesn't define you. You survived. You rebuilt. You're the strongest person I know. Dahlia shook her head. I'm not strong. I'm terrified all the time. I look over my shoulder constantly, wondering if today is the day he'll find me. Tyler took her hands in his grip warm and reassuring. That's not weakness, that's human. But you don't have to face it alone anymore. Before Dahlia could respond, the sound of an approaching carriage drew their attention. A sleek black conveyance with matched bay horses pulled up in front of the boarding house, clearly not local. A well-dressed man stepped down, his expensive clothes and imperious manner marking him as an outsider. Dahlia froze, her blood turning to ice in her veins. It's him, she whispered, her fingers digging into Tyler's arm. James. Tyler's expression hardened. He rose to his feet, positioning himself protectively in front of Dahlia. Stay behind me. James Elliott approached the porch, his handsome face arranged in an expression of concern that didn't reach his cold eyes. Dahlia, my dear, he called, his voice carrying the cultured tones of Boston society. Thank God I found you. I've been so worried. How did you find me? Dahlia asked, her voice remarkably steady despite the terror gripping her heart. James smiled thinly. You should know by now that I have resources, my dear. When my wife disappears with a portion of my money, I make it my business to locate her. Your wife? Tyler's voice was dangerously soft. James sized him up with a dismissive glance. Yes, and you are? Tyler Callahan, he replied, making no move to extend his hand. Owner of the Double C Ranch. How quaint, James remarked with barely disguised contempt. Well, Mr. Callahan, I appreciate your assistance in looking after my wife during her episode. She's had these flights of fancy before, I'm afraid. The doctors call it female hysteria. That's not true, Dahlia said, stepping forward despite her fear. I left because you nearly killed me. Because you're a monster who hides behind wealth and social standing. James's expression darkened. Now, Dahlia, there's no need to air our private matters in front of strangers. Come along, the carriage is waiting. She's not going anywhere with you, Tyler stated, his stance widening slightly, a clear signal that he was prepared to physically prevent James from approaching. James sighed, as if dealing with a particularly dim child. This doesn't concern you, cowboy. This is a private matter between a husband and his wayward wife. When a man beats a woman until she can barely stand, it stops being private, Tyler countered. It becomes the business of anyone with a conscience. By now, their raised voices had attracted attention. Martha and Henry Wilson emerged from the mercantile across the street. Sheriff Monroe appeared at the corner, hand resting casually on his holster. Other townsfolk began to gather, sensing the confrontation brewing. James's face flushed with anger, but he kept his voice controlled. You're making a grave mistake, interfering in matters you don't understand. Dahlia is my wife, legally bound to me. She has duties and obligations she's neglecting, and she's taken money that belongs to me. I took my inheritance, Dahlia corrected, finding courage in the presence of her friends and neighbors. Money my grandmother left to me, not you. Money you had no right to control. The law says otherwise, James snapped. A wife's property belongs to her husband, and a wife belongs with her husband. Sheriff Monroe stepped forward. That may be the law back east, sir, but out here, we have a simpler approach. A man who beats a woman isn't fit to be her husband, legal documents be damned. James looked around at the gathering crowd, realizing he was outnumbered. I can have all of you arrested for this. Obstruction of justice, kidnapping. She came here of her own free will, Tyler interrupted. And she's staying of her own free will. She should be grateful. I'm even willing to take her back, James spat, his urbane facade crumbling to reveal the ugliness beneath. After the shame and embarrassment she's caused me, she should be on her knees thanking me for my forgiveness. Tyler's hands clenched into fists. She deserves to live, he said, his voice ringing with conviction. Not just survive life. Free from fear, free from pain, free from you. And who are you to decide what my wife deserves? James demanded, taking a threatening step forward. In one fluid motion, Tyler drew his revolver, not pointing it at James, but holding it at his side, a clear warning. I'm the man who loves her, he said simply, and I won't let you hurt her again. A stunned silence fell over the gathering. Dahlia stared at Tyler's back, his words echoing in her mind. He loved her. Despite knowing her past, despite the complications, he loved her. James looked from Tyler's resolute expression to the grim faces of the townsfolk surrounding him. Sheriff Monroe's hand hadn't moved from his holster. The Wilsons stood with arms crossed, their usually kind faces hard with disapproval. Mrs. Holloway had emerged onto the porch, a shotgun held casually in her capable hands. This isn't over, James threatened, backing toward his carriage. I'll return with proper authorities. You'll all regret this interference. I wouldn't advise coming back, Sheriff Monroe called after him. Frontier justice tends to be swift and final. A man with your proclivities might find himself on the wrong end of a hanging rope. James glared at them all, his handsome face twisted with fury. His gaze landed on Dahlia. You'll regret this, he promised. You're nothing without me. Dahlia stepped forward, emerging from behind Tyler's protective stance. No, James. I was nothing with you. Here, I found myself again. I found people who value me for who I am, not what I can endure. She took Tyler's free hand in hers. I've found love. With a final curse, James climbed back into his carriage and signaled the driver. The vehicle pulled away in a cloud of dust, taking with it the last vestige of Dahlia's past. The gathered townsfolk dispersed slowly, many pausing to offer words of support to Dahlia or clap Tyler on the shoulder in approval. When they were finally alone on the porch, Tyler holstered his weapon and turned to face her. "I meant what I said," he told her, his blue eyes earnest. "I love you, Dahlia Evans. I know it's soon, and I know you have healing to do. I don't expect anything from you. I just needed you to know." Dahlia reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the strong line of his jaw. "I think I've loved you since you first walked into the mercantile," she confessed. "I was just too afraid to admit it, even to myself." Tyler caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "We can take this as slow as you need." "And if I don't want to take it slow?" Dahlia asked, surprising herself with her boldness. A smile spread across Tyler's face, lighting his eyes with joy. "Then I'd say we have some planning to do, Miss Evans." 3 months later, on a crisp autumn day with the aspen trees blazing gold against the blue Colorado sky, Dahlia Evans became Dahlia Callahan in a simple ceremony outside the little church in Willow Creek. Martha Wilson had sewn her a beautiful dress of ivory satin. Mrs. Holloway had baked a 3-tier cake decorated with fresh wildflowers. The entire town turned out to celebrate, the boarding house lawn transformed with twinkling lanterns and tables groaning with food. As they danced under the stars, Dahlia looked up at her husband's face. Her husband, a word she had once associated only with fear and pain, now transformed into something precious and joyful. "Happy?" Tyler asked, his arms strong and gentle around her waist. "More than I ever thought possible," Dahlia replied honestly. "Though I am a bit nervous about moving to the ranch tomorrow." Tyler's expression grew serious. "If you're not ready, we can stay in town a while longer. The ranch will wait." Dahlia shook her head. "No, I'm ready. It's just, I've never had a real home before. A place that truly belonged to me." "It's yours now," Tyler assured her. "Everything I have is yours. All I need is you," Dahlia said, rising on tiptoe to kiss him. "You gave me more than safety or protection. You gave me the courage to believe I deserved happiness." As the celebration continued around them, Dahlia looked at the faces of her friends, her family. Martha and Henry Wilson, who had given her not just employment, but genuine affection. Mrs. Holloway, whose stern exterior masked a fiercely protective heart. Sheriff Monroe, who had stood against injustice without hesitation. And Tyler, who had looked at a broken, frightened woman and seen not what she had endured, but what she could become. Who had believed in her worth when she had forgotten it herself. The past didn't disappear. There were still nights when Dahlia woke in a cold sweat, the echoes of old pain reverberating through her dreams. But now, when she opened her eyes, Tyler was there, his steady presence an anchor in the darkness. And as the years passed, those nights grew fewer. The Double C Ranch prospered under their joint care. Dahlia discovered talents she never knew she possessed for ranching, for business, for creating a home filled with warmth and love. Children came first, a daughter with Tyler's blue eyes and Dahlia's quiet strength, then twin boys who brought joyful chaos to the ranch house. Sometimes, Dahlia would stand on the porch of their home, watching the sun set over the mountains, and marvel at the journey that had brought her here. From the gilded cage of her Boston life to the wide, open freedom of Colorado. From survival to truly living. And always, inevitably, Tyler would find her in these moments. He would wrap his arms around her from behind, press a kiss to her temple, and they would stand together, watching the day end and the stars emerge, secure in the knowledge that whatever came, they would face it side by side. For Dahlia had learned the most important lesson of all, that love, real love, wasn't about possession or control or fear. It was about seeing another person wholly, flaws and strengths alike, and choosing them every day. It was about standing together against the world when necessary and knowing, bone deep, that you were never truly alone. In the wild, untamed beauty of the West, Dahlia Evans had found not just safety, but her truest self. And in Tyler Callahan's steadfast heart, she had found a love that didn't demand gratitude for mere survival, but insisted she deserved nothing less than a life lived fully, joyfully, and without fear.